as much as people in marketing will, tell you over and over and over again about the importance of ethics in marketing, you know, let's be honest here. This is a cram app. Just got to have the truth. The best way to succeed in marketing is to be as unethical as possible, without really being caught being unethical, because then you look bad. But we need to look at ethical issues. We need to look at ethical behavior, and these are things that are beyond the legal requirements. There are some things that you can do in marketing that might be illegal, but they're still unethical. They're wrong. The consequences for unethical marketing, it could hurt the reputation of your company as a marketing company, or the product itself. So if you are marketing your own products, you need to be very, very careful of ruining your own reputation through your marketing. And it is obviously going to cause the sales to fall if your reputation has fallen. When it comes to advertising, there is an ethical code for marketers, and that's what it looks like there. It's the Australian Association of National Advertisers Code of Ethics. And it's from 2012, so it's not going to be in any of your textbooks. The AANA Code of Ethics is what they look at when it comes to advertising, and it's not very long. I mean, you can look at it yourself. It deals with how to advertise to children and what you can't say and can't do and blah blah blah. But it's written in very general kind of terms. Complaints under this code go to the Advertising Standards Bureau. And that's really there to make it sound like it's a court or something, but it's not a court, right? It hears these cases, but I've got cases in quotation marks because it's really self-regulation. This place is paid for by the ad industry because the ad industry is terrified that the government is going to step in and say, no, 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 we are going to make laws about things you can and can't do. So they kind of regulate themselves to avoid the government putting their foot down. They want to be able to have complaints, not go to the government, but really just go back to themselves, right? By making this Advertising Standards Bureau as the complaints body. So they'll get a complaint, or they might get 30 complaints or something like that about an ad that's on TV, and then they go, oh, okay, we'll talk to the people involved, and the other side will say, oh, well, we don't really think that it's breaching ethical standards, and then they'll make a decision to tell them to take down the ad. They don't really have the power to. But it's really in the marketing company's best interest to do it, because if for long enough they just ignore these ethical issues, then the government is going to step in, that there is going to be outrage. If those things aren't taken off TV, if those ads aren't taken off TV or off the side of the buses, then someone's going to realize, oh wait, they're really only regulating themselves. When it comes to truth and accuracy in advertising, there are a few loopholes, right? Slight exaggerations are okay. It's also okay to have objective information that isn't really. So if you think of Medifax and Zoot Review or Zoot Review, then those are things that are kind of passed off as being objective. Like, some celebrity has just endorsed this product because they really thought that it helped with their family. And, the whole Medifax, it says they're healthcare information advertising, but it's just product advertising, right? And it's all done by the same group. I think it's called the Buchanan Group. It's passing things off as being objective. And it says things like, in the ads, like, this is an unscripted advertisement. Yeah, but it's a paid advertisement. Just because the people were able to come up with their own words for how good Nurofen was for their kids, it doesn't really mean that they're not getting paid for it. There are also things like implied features. Implied features like, you may be able to do this, but we're not actually saying you can do this. Oh God, no. We never said that. We just kind of implied that these were, things that you could do with this product. There are also ethical issues when it comes to good taste. There are certain images and themes and tactics that should be avoided. The real, bad one that I remember was the Supre one, the Get Jegged campaign. And you've got the jeggings there, which by themselves are just an unnatural, disgusting, horrible thing. But what they were really, doing was they had these photos, and you can see on the left-hand side, probably very, very tiny, I hope it's very tiny, of like this topless model, and she's supposed to be young, but she's obviously over 18, but she's supposed to be really, really young, and it was on the side of buses and all this sort of stuff. That really, really offended people. I would say particularly mums, who were thinking, you know what, My daughter shops at Super A. Why you would let your daughter shop at Super A, I don't know. But my daughter shops at Super A. And I don't want her being advertised to like this. I think this is, demeaning to women and all that sort of stuff. So certain images and themes and tactics really should be avoided. It's not in good taste to have someone like that in an ad for something that is kind of marketed towards, teen and preteen girls. There are also products that may damage people's health. Some products that are harmful are still legal, but you really need to think, okay, how do we market them? They often, there are things like cigarettes and stuff like that that are still legal and you can't really market them anymore. But there are some ethical issues about, what you can and can't say about them. And really the cigarette companies go for well, cigarettes are bad for you. We would never sell them to underage people, and it's all about really choice. And some of the tobacconists around the place are actually called choice because of that idea that they're not going to say flavor or health. Really, what they're marketing on is that you do still have a choice, and you can choose whatever brand you want. You can choose to smoke, and no one can tell you not to. There's also a thing called sugging. And sugging, it sounds disgusting. Sugging is selling under the guise of or disguise of research, right? There's also other things like fugging, or they call it frugging now, which is fundraising under the guise of research. The idea is that you make a phone call pretending that you're doing market research, but then it turns into a sales pitch, right? And it might not be during the conversation. It might be like a week later. So you get a phone call and they say, oh, we're just doing some market research about mortgages and things like that. And you say, oh, I don't have a mortgage. You go, and they talk to you and they say, all right, thank you very much for your input. And then a week later, you get a phone call from a mortgage place just happening to offer exactly what you're after. Selling under the guise of research it can be dangerous because it can backfire if people find out exactly what you're doing. But probably the key word there is guise. Because no one really uses that word, in everyday language. I'm sure people do. But that idea, it kind of troubles some people. So selling under guise under guise is what skanky girls do, I guess. But the next thing is engaging in fair competition. Businesses have to be fair when referring to their competitors in their advertising. So, for example, ads shouldn't make false allegations or insults towards their competitors. There was a fight between I think Sorbent and Kleenex, and Sorbent made some claim about being Australia's favourite toilet paper or something, and Sorbent was cranky about it, or Kleenex or whatever. One of them was cranky with the other one, and even took it to the Advertising Standards Bureau to complain about it. And say, look, that's not fair. You can't make that claim. You can't say that you're Australia's favourite because we sell more. So we're Australia's favourite, so you can't make that claim. We're not going to create an entire new ad to say, no, they're lying, because it seems petty. So they just be petty quietly. There's, at the end, a current business issue of this section. And we don't really cover the case studies here. If you want case studies, go on the Facebook page, get Ian Moore's book. He's got tons of little case studies. But if you want the really up-to-date ones, get on the Facebook page for the Cram apps. But we should really cover this current business issue. You need to examine why ethical behaviour and government regulation are important in marketing. And this would be a really good question to put into an exam, because it would really get people. They would be able to explain what ethical behaviour is and what the government regulation is. But the big question is why? Why is it important? Well, government regulation is important because it ensures genuine competition. You can't just cheat and that's the way that you win. It also, for all of us, it increases trust in businesses in general. The government relies on businesses to make money. They rely on people to go to those businesses. If you don't have any government regulation, then people aren't going to buy the products from those businesses, which is going to wreck the economy. So it is important to have customers trusting businesses and know that the government will back them up if the business screws them over. Why is ethical behaviour important? Well, it's important to be ethical because customers might reward you. So places like the Body Shop and places that sell Whole Foods and things like that, being ethical can be a really good way of selling. If you're not, though, customers might boycott it. So there was this famous Nestle boycott where customers decided, and it's still kind of going on now. It's kind of this worldwide thing, where Nestle was allegedly uh, getting people getting very very poor women in Africa, getting their babies hooked on Nestle, baby formula, and then once they got discharged from the hospital, they still had to buy it. And the woman was no longer producing milk, so they were kind of stuck buying it. Highly, highly, highly unethical. And there is still that boycott going on. There are smaller boycotts, and often, groups, especially groups of mums, will often call for a boycott of a product. But you need to be very, very careful of that because they have huge power when it comes to word of mouth. Oh, don't buy that. I heard that business does this and this and this, and they're completely unethical. Right? So it is important to be ethical, and it is important to have government regulation for those reasons.